Welcome to Kent County Closeup. I'm Deb Havens. In April 2019, we marked the 20th anniversary of the massacre at Columbine High in Colorado, after the worst year of school shootings in modern American history. Today we focus on the efforts of Rockford Public Schools Superintendent, Dr. Michael Shibler, to protect our children and provide a sense of safety in our schools. And we'll meet the former Rockford High School student Julia Sickrey, who led her classmates to a movement for change after the Stoneman-Douglas shooting in Parkland, Florida. So Dr. Shibler and Julia, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Glad to be here.
You know, last year the Washington Post launched a series of investigations in the school shootings that had been taking place. They actually tracked incidents of gun violence and determined that 2018 was the worst year for shootings that took place. Nearly 25 did take place, with nearly 100 people who were shot in classrooms, over 30 killed. Dr. Shibler, as you heard of each of these tragedies, were you analyzing what districts could have done in the circumstances?
I think in every case, not only do school districts, but law enforcement as well, we learn from these incidences, these tragic incidences, to how we might be able to be more proactive and preventive in these types of situations and so forth. So we try to do that, but it's still, you're talking about a public arena, whether it be a school, or a movie theater, or a church, or a shopping mall, and it's difficult under any circumstances to be completely 100% safe.
Julia, you were a high school senior in 2018. You graduated in June.
Yeah.
Did you or your classmates ever feel your own safety was threatened during that time?
When I was a freshman, my sister was a junior at Rockford High School, and that was the year of the bomb threats. And it didn't affect me directly, but I saw how it affected my sister and everyone that was at the main building. And so just feeling scared and not knowing what was going on or if they would be safe the next day at school, I could see how that affected everyone, and it was a scary time period.
Well, what we're going to talk about is how we can try to protect students in that circumstance, or what we hope will never become a circumstance.
Right.
So one of the fundamental arguments here is guns or no guns in schools. There's one school of thought that says you should arm students and staff. The opposing side says no guns ever in schools. So I first of all think that this whole situation is complicated by the fact that Michigan has an open carry law. I wondered your thoughts on that, Dr. Shibler.
Well, first of all, I want to make a statement that I'm absolutely 100% for the Second Amendment. I have no problem with the Second Amendment. I believe the Second Amendment about gun ownership, whether it be for safety reasons, for their own protection, an individual, or for sport, or whatever like that, hunting, is appropriate. But in carrying a gun, open or concealed, if you're not a law enforcement professional, there's no reason to carry a weapon in a public place. And so therefore, when it comes to schools, and that's what we're talking about today, the only person that should be allowed to carry a weapon would be a professional law enforcement officer.
Well, I know that as far back as 2013, the Rockford Board of Education had requested that public schools be exempted from the open carry law, and I know 2 years later nothing had changed.
Right.
So what's the circumstance now?
Circumstance now is that if somebody, we have done a lot in Rockford. Let me start with that. In 1998, a year before Columbine, I was watching a news program and incidents in Arkansas in a middle school where there's a shooting. And I had was reading more articles about those types of situations. And I created a department of safety for our school district, suburban district. And I hired a retired law enforcement professional from Grand Rapids, and he became the director of security. And he hired 11 other people who were most retired law enforcement. So since 1998, we've had that department in our district. So 20 years, 21 years. And I've gone through 2 or 3 directors now, and we still have that same department. So we've done a lot as far as Rockford is concerned to create an environment that is as safe as possible with law enforcement people who are part of that department, who are available all the time.
Well, so I can understand, to me it makes perfect sense that you should never have guns in schools. I will be very straight about that. I have no question. I think the fewer the better. But as a better alternative, now you said having a law enforcement person, I know a lot of schools do have a deputy from the Kent County Sheriff's Department that is part of their safety program. What's been your approach?
Well, a lot of schools do that. And until this past fall, we have not had a school resource officer because we've got this department of security that in fact is made up of retired law enforcement professionals. And in fact, I decided, because every year I try to improve what we do when it comes to student safety and staff safety and community safety. And so I did hire an SRO, school resource officer, deputy from the Sheriff's Department, who has become a part of our security department. Okay, so he's just an addition to augment, to supplement what we already do, and so forth. And when it comes to carrying of any weapon in school, we also have these security vestibules that we built through a bond issue in 2014.
I wanted to ask you about that. So these are actual facility.
Right. That you come in to any one of our buildings and you stop right at the entrance. And it's a large area, but it's all glass encased, safety glass. And you can't get into the office or the main part of any of our buildings without being buzzed in. So we have that as well that we've added, plus a number of cameras. So if somebody comes in open carrying, they're not going any further than that. They're at the vestibules and that's where they stay, and so forth. And that's just something, another proactive measure that we take to try to prevent a tragedy.
Yeah. Julia, I'm sure that it was obvious that some of this was going on in terms of adapting facilities. What were students' responses to that?
I think a lot of students didn't understand where they were coming from, and so it kind of sometimes it feels like a prison if you have to be buzzed in, but I know it's for safety reasons too. And with the gun carrying and having schools with guns, a lot of students, there would be a mixed reaction from that. And so like some groups would come and stand back behind the Second Amendment, even though it doesn't really have as much to do with the school safety, I feel personally. And so, sorry, I lost my turn. And so just the students, it was very divisive. And some people would say the Second Amendment and that teachers should have guns. And personally, I don't feel there should be guns in schools at all, because the only people that are trained are like law enforcement. And so when you give teachers guns, then that could create another danger, and like more students could die, or teachers could shoot other people. And
Well, yeah, because you're talking about the incident where someone has a gun in school and is maybe perfectly reasonable, a staff person or something, but then an incident occurs and police come into a school trying to figure out who is actually the shooter and who is trying to protect kids, and then what? You know, you have all kinds of guns, nobody knows who's what. I totally agree with you. I mean,
I can make it real clear, because I've had conversations with FBI, state police, county sheriff, local police, particularly when we were designing these vestibules before they were built, and when through our security department and their training that they go through, in addition to our practicing of issues where students practice a code red situation. Law enforcement clearly tells me, without a doubt, when they come into a building where there is a possible shooting or a threat, they will shoot anybody that has a gun.
wow.
Anyone. And it doesn't matter whether if it's an adult who's there and has a concealed weapon and pulls it out and so forth, they're going to get shot. And they're going to get shot by a trained law enforcement professional who in fact trains hundreds of hours for a situation like that. Not because they got a CPL, that they practice for 8 hours to get a certificate to carry a concealed weapon and so forth. And so the situation is, not only am I trying to protect our students and our staff and our community, but even somebody that feels they have the right to carry a weapon into a public school. They're putting their own lives in danger because nobody's going to ask, hey, are you the good guy?
Right.
They're going to get shot.
Right.
And I'm not saying that. The professionals tell me that.
Yes. And I think what you're both saying is that this becomes a very divisive issue because there are strong thoughts on both sides, and that becomes a big challenge, especially for you, Dr. Shibler, as an administrator, and not to mention all the other administrators who are coping with something similar. So what do you think, in terms of your community support, is a good path forward? How do you actually help your community solve this situation or understand it?
Years ago, and Julia may have seen them, I put up signs in front of every building, entrance into every building. It's a red sign with white lettering. It says weapon-free zone. Put it up there. And I got calls from people saying, you can't do that. We have a right to carry. And I said, it's a weapon-free zone. And so if you have a concealed weapon permit, I suggest you put that concealed weapon in your glove compartment of your car and leave it there. And everybody's fine with that. And then you come into school, if you're bringing lunch money for your student or books or coming in for a meeting, everything's good. And you're welcome. But leave the revolver in your glove compartment.
Well, I don't blame you for that. So let's talk about preparing students. You mentioned the Code Red circumstance. What does a Code Red look like, and what are the circumstances where you would actually practice that?
Law requires that, just like you have tornado drills. You've had those forever. When I was at school, we had them. And fire drills. And how many times have there been a fire, or even a tornado? But you practice. Same thing with Code Red. You practice 4 times a year. And in fact, what you're doing is just preparing for the worst case scenario. You in fact may never ever happen, and I certainly pray that it would never happen. But in fact, if it were, an incident should occur, you're at least following a protocol that has been established, just like you do fire and tornado drills.
I wanted to explore this a little bit because, again, following up on your thought, Julia, when you were describing how your sister felt with a bomb scare that may or may not be real, there is some research that students who are in a lockdown situation or Code Red might even suffer psychological damage if they truly feel like they're in a threatening situation. How do you deal with that, or how do you help students deal with that?
With the invention of cell phones, when we started doing these Code Red, students would text or call their parents on their cell phone.
Oh dear.
So that created obviously some concern and so forth. And so when we had for real incident, what Julia is talking about with the bomb threats, I immediately sent through Family Access and School Messenger messages home to parents saying, here's what's happened and here's what we're doing. And we did that on every case until this issue of the bomb threats was resolved and solved. But this bomb issue thing carried not only in Rockford, one student, but it also was connected to a person in Texas, in Massachusetts, and in Great Britain.
For heaven's
sake. And they're all connected with each other. And we got the FBI involved. We've got international police involved, and plus our local, state, and so forth. And we solved it. People were caught, and we've dealt with it, and so forth. And we'll do that in every situation. And our technology has gotten so much better that if somebody wants to try this again, they're going to pay a heavy price.
Yeah. Well, and it's sad that we have to come to that circumstance. But as a parent or just as a community member, of course you want kids to come out of that situation, even a practice situation, more secure, not feeling less. So how do you feel, do teachers really feel comfortable discussing this with students in advance of a drill?
I hope so. I hope they do. Their main component in the safety of our students. In fact, they're right at the top there when it comes to making sure any type of a difficult situation, a safety situation, that they're the people that the students are immediately involved with. But I, under no circumstances would I ever support teachers having guns. Absolutely not. Their job is to teach, to educate.
Right.
And it has nothing to do, why would add that to their list of responsibilities? It's just not right.
I mean, has any teacher ever come up to you and said, please, will you let me carry a gun to school?
None that I'm aware of,
Can't
anyway.
imagine.
It doesn't make sense. But as I said, even our director of security, and he's got 12 people working for him, I have under a board authority, school board authority, that if I feel there's a threatening situation, I will tell him to carry a revolver. And now the school resource officer we have that started last fall, he does carry a sidearm.
Yes. Well, let's turn to the student activism in response to some of these situations. Students definitely became a political force after the Stoneman-Douglas incident, which happened on Valentine's Day in 2018. So, Julia, you and your fellow student Greta Cruz decided after the Parkland shooting that you would take action in Rockford High School. So how did that affect you, and what did you decide to do?
So after seeing the shooting in Parkland, we just, along with all the students across the nation, there was kind of just like a change that this is the students' time to take charge, because clearly like the adults weren't doing what they needed to be doing. So that's when we decided, at first we came up with an idea to do a walkout, because that's what all the students were banding together to do. But then we wanted to do something more that could take a stance and actually propel into something else. And so we came up with the idea for a Day for Change and a Movement for Change event. And so that's where we started. It would be a day on April 20th, which is the day that Columbine happened. And it involved all of the clubs across the school and the choir and different teachers. And so it was a day to bring everyone together to actually start this, to make a difference and make kids feel safe when they go to school.
So, Dr. Shibler, what was your reaction when you
Fantastic. I applaud. You have to understand, I grew up in the 60s. So high school and college, 60s. And if people want to look at the history of the 60s, there are a lot of demonstrations that took place. We were actively involved in all kinds of social change and so forth. So when the students approached us with this idea of becoming vocal and proactive, I applauded it, absolutely. And in fact, I want to see more people, including adults, become actively involved. I took a couple students down with me to speak in front of in Lansing, in front of the Senate subcommittee on gun possession and so forth, and open and concealed carry, and so forth, and asked these students to talk for the subcommittee, and I did as well. I've done that a number of times as far as giving testimony. We have to be as a society, students, adults, whatever, become vocal on these issues and let our state representatives, lawmakers, and nationals, U.S. representatives and so forth, Congress, aware of the fact that we're not against guns. What we're against is guns in public places, which become a potential threat for young people.
Absolutely, and we've certainly seen the horrible results that can happen. So we actually have a bit of footage from the day that you organized with Greta and with administrative support. So let's take a look at that footage. It's a couple minutes long.
What's up, Rockford? I'm Zach Nichols.
And I'm Sadie Smythe. Welcome to this week's edition of Beyond the Rock School News.
Change. Last week, we here at Rockford got to experience our very own Day of Change.
Students gathered at the TED to show their support for change.
I just don't want another school shooting to happen. All of these deaths that could have been prevented, I just want to end that.
On Friday, April 20th, the anniversary of the Columbine shooting, students walked in unity to support change in gun safety of schools across America. This movement was one of more than 2,000 demonstrations nationwide.
Things like this and gathering like this, you are making a difference, you are making a positive change. So I first just want to thank you
Seniors Greta Cruz and Julia Sickrey decided to take it upon themselves to organize representatives across RHS. Clubs participated by representing safety within their own causes, such as Garden Club, Trap and Skeet, GSA, Way, and more.
Just because you are teenagers doesn't mean you have to sit quietly and wait for the adults to make decisions that affect you. You have the power to create change. Some of you will be old enough to vote in the fall. Register, cast your ballot, call your representatives, organize events like this. This is how change happens.
It's really important that we all band together and change the fact that people say that teenagers can't do much.
A lot of people don't want to talk about this.
And I just like to make a change and hopefully make a difference that we won't be able to see school shootings in the news anymore because it won't be happening.
See the world and be the change.
Be the change.
Gee, that is so fantastic.
Thank you.
What an amazing event. What did it feel like for you to look out over that crowd and see everything coming together the way you had evidently planned so well?
It was inspiring, which is cheesy, but just seeing, the thing that hit me the most was seeing the freshmen coming over and walking to join this group because they're kind of isolated a little bit away
They're in a
from
separate building.
And so I remember myself at that age not being as involved with politics or activism, and just to see those kids at that age deciding they're going to take a stand and come join the older kids, I just thought that was super cool. And just, I didn't know how it was going to turn out, and so just seeing it all play out how it did, it felt inspiring.
What did you think of your partnership with Dr. Shibler and the other administrators? Did that go as you had hoped?
We started, I think it was, we both worked together to get a compromise to what we had in mind, and so that was a great thing. And we may have had some differences, and we didn't, it wasn't a smooth ride, but I think the finished product was good. And so I'm really happy with how it went.
Well, it looks like it was fantastic. So, Dr. Shibler, when you were in the negotiating process, I mean, you've certainly dealt with unions and all that other stuff. What about dealing with students? What is it important to keep in mind here?
I think what's important to keep in mind is, one, this is a great learning experience for students. It's a great opportunity for them to voice their position and concern about issues that directly affect them. And the safety of the school environment directly affects students.
Yes.
And so it's obviously, I think this is a great opportunity for our young people at Rockford High School to become involved. And the key now is that they've got to continue to be involved, because this issue is not going to go away. And this issue, in order to have meaningful change that protects the safety of people, whether in any public place, including schools, the initiative has to continue. If it just stops, you give everybody who wants to have guns everywhere an opportunity to keep pushing for that. Mm-hmm. We have got to be proactive.
Julia, what are your thoughts about next steps? Because you're not at high school any longer.
I think the next step is legislation level and reaching out to legislators, may that be calling them or showing up there and talking to them or going to their coffee hours and meeting with them, actually, because that's the best way to change is when you meet face to face. And so I think meeting with your legislators and going out to marches and sharing your voice, because that's where it starts. You find people that think alike and then you band together to make a difference. And so I think that's where you just have to continue, and you have to continue talking about it, because I know now all of these shootings are turning into statistics, but we have to keep remembering their people and keep talking about it and not let the fire die out.
Really well said. What are your thoughts, Dr. Shibler? Can you continue working with students in this direction?
Oh, of course. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I want to see people that take a strong interest in these social issues, and they are, and so forth. And I try to even encourage adults, parents and others to become involved in a way that, it's free. The First Amendment, you have the right to express your position on issues. And as I said at the beginning of the show, I'm all for the Second Amendment, but there's got to be reason within the Second Amendment. Just like with freedom of speech, you can't scream fire in a crowded movie theater. If you do, you're going to be arrested and pay a penalty. Well, it's the same thing with the Second Amendment. Reason, common sense, and there's no reason except law enforcement to have a firearm in a public school. None.
Well, I certainly hope that the closest any of us comes to this kind of a situation is just this discussion today. But I want to thank you both for being here, especially you, Dr. Shibler, for your advocacy, your strong advocacy on behalf of alternatives to guns in school. And I want to see you in the future with being a strong political advocate and voice for the future protection of other students besides you. You have a great start there.
Thank you.
She sure does.
She sure does. And that's it for Kent County Close-Up today. I want to thank you very much for joining us. I'm Deb Havens here at GRTV with the production crew. Thanks again.